All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Enhancing the Accountant Bookkeeper Connection series featuring KATA Accounting. So hello, I am Tanya Hiltz. Most of you know me, CPB and AIA. Yes, those are new initials. These stand for Accredited Impactful Advisor, which is through the Mentor Plus program through Jeannie Whitehouse. So very proud of that. Worked for almost 2 years on that, or a year and a bit anyway. Anyway, I'm here because I'm passionate about education. I obviously didn't update that one. I'm passionate about clean files too, but education. And you can find me at Tanya's Bootcamp. So a little bit about myself. I received my Accredited Impactful Advisor designation in 2021. Level 5 certified advisor through Mentor Plus under the tutelage of Jeannie Whitehouse. Insightful Accountant Top 100 ProAdvisor for 2018 through 2021. Intuit Global Firm of the Future for 2018. I am a volunteer mentor through Futurepreneur Canada and Women in Accounting, a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, a director at CPB Canada, and the founder of Cloud Business Services and Tanya's Bookkeepers Bootcamp. Just some continuing education credit information. This webinar does qualify for CPD credits through CPB Canada. There will be 2 polls that must both be answered in order to qualify for those credits. And recording of the webinar and your CPD credits will be emailed within 2 days. So I'm now using Flowdesk to send everything. So this will be the first time, but I can send everything right away. And there is minimal administration time to it. And I asked a couple of people who are normally on my webinars, do they prefer the webinar and the CPD credits separately? And they said the less emails, the better. So you will receive it in one email, but the email title will say it's both the webinar and the CPD credits. For those who are not attending live or don't qualify for the CPD credits because both polls weren't answered, yours will just simply say webinar recording. And that will be emailed within 2 days.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. It's actually really exciting, the nice new process that we have.
That's a big change. Yeah.
It is a big change. So you'll have to tell me what you think when you get it too, because of course you're on the list. So you'll get you'll get it as well. It kind of goes out like one of those newsletters through Flowdesk. And thank you to Tamitha Denye's, who is not on the call right now, for actually pointing that out to our attention. So it's really nice. Anyway, so this features Jonathan Carter. So he is founder and principal accountant at KATA Accounting Solutions. And we've been collaborating with Jonathan and his team for a number of years. We have multiple mutual clients. He's my accountant too. So there we go, some trust there. Works in QBO, has attention to detail and outstanding customer service. So you can take it away from here, Jonathan.
Well, thanks very much, Tanya.
You're welcome very much.
So yeah, I guess I don't need to spend as much time introducing myself. Just a quick couple things. I was a member of the inaugural Intuit Accountants Council. That was kind of a steering committee that helped Intuit decide where they were going to take product and what they were going to develop. I've had a long-standing relationship with Intuit, and we still actively work, sometimes collaboratively with Tanya, on helping them improve existing product and things along those lines. I was the recipient of the 2018 Inspire Accountant Award for contributions to the future of the industry. That was very, very flattering for us because it was not something we were expecting at all. We are elite ProAdvisors, QBO Advanced Certified. All of our team, week 1 gets QBO Basic Certified, and within 6 months, we want them QBO Advanced Certified. We are still working on catching up according to that policy, but everybody you're dealing with at KATA has their hands in QBO very deep and has good knowledge. And this year, for the first time, we're made the Insightful Accountants 2021 Top 100 ProAdvisor list. Very happy about that as well. We are trusted advisors for several bookkeeping firms. We're considered thought leaders in technology and accounting, and we love working with technology companies. Our tagline is communicate, collaborate, and innovate because, well, communication is the #1 reason people leave accounting firms. And, everybody's a little bit different. So you have to find solutions that work for the business people behind the actual tax returns or advisory work or bookkeeping or whatever it might be. Not every solution is plug and play. It'll be fine. So a bit about Jordan. Jordan's director of the Sheldon Group. who are tax incentive consultants. Some of the things they work on are SR&ED, IRAP, Innovation Employment Grants, OIDMTC. I actually had to look that one up. He's also a partner at Quantum Business Law, who are corporate lawyers. They've hosted a lot of good webinars with lots of information. And part of today, he will be going through a case study from one of those webinars. They're big on education and big on educating tax professionals. Jordan, did you have anything you want to add about yourself?
Oh, well, nothing to elaborate. I appreciate the introduction, Jonathan. Yeah, I just go back to Quantum Business Law and the educational course that we've been hosting for accountants and lawyers throughout Canada. And so originally it was in-person seminar sessions that we're hosting in various cities, but changed over about 2 years ago to webinars. And I've been a part of our monthly program, but it's been a really great privilege to be able to speak on various tax issues to accountants and other groups of professionals. But I'd say very much within the tax field, within the tax law field, we're I'd say certainly leading experts within that area. And then on the Sheldon Group side, I'd say we operate in all provinces in Canada as well, and we're one of the large boutique firms here in Canada.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about something right up Jordan's alley, which are grants and SR&ED. So we're not going to have time to get into a lot of detail. Just to run through the quick agenda. What is a grant? Is it free money? How you can prepare for a grant? How we as people who perform bookkeeping can help our customers? Where to look for grants? And then we're going to get a little bit more on SR&ED, including a case study and a Q&A period. Now, I apologize. I am probably going to go quite quickly through this material because I want to make sure that there's ample opportunity for the case study and for Q&A. So, all right.
Yeah,
so the first, yeah, there's a little bit on the agenda. So the first question is, this has to be answered to get your CPD. What is a grant? An interest-free loan that the company can get, free money that's easy to get, funds provided to promote a specific social or economic goal that the recipient does not need to repay, or A and B.
Okay, so we've only got 42% responding to the poll. So remember, you need to answer both polls in order to qualify for your CPD. So we will do a countdown now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We will end the poll and share the results.
Yes, so the answer would be C. Typically, these are funds provided to promote a specific social or economic goal. All right, so what is a grant? A grant is an amount of money that can be provided by a government, an organization, a person. Quite often, they're special interest groups to promote a specific subject matter, social economic goal. The funds generally don't have to be repaid if the grant terms are satisfied. There are situations where portions of the funds need to be repaid. There are situations where the funds are not received until after all the spending has been done. So it really does vary a lot. Some common areas for grants: research and development. SR&ED is not technically a grant, it's a tax incentive, but we'll definitely be looking more in detail at that. Business expansion, hiring and training employees, and capital investment. So really it's about creating new opportunities for Canadian business and Canadian labor. Hopefully you get approved for your grants when you go through, and make sure that you do everything that is required in order to get approved. The number one reason I've seen people not get approved for grants is because they didn't follow the instructions. So besides the government, there can be grants from private companies. So probably during Small Business Week, you've seen a lot of that kind of activity. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of that. Banks, especially Scotia, RBC, TD, all had $5,000 grants available for businesses that were highly impacted from the pandemic. They can come from educational institutions, they can come from nonprofit organizations, and they can sometimes come from individuals as well. So for instance, there might be a not-for-profit that is promoting, I don't know, women in medicine that could provide a grant through a university to students who are pursuing that line of study. There's a whole bunch, way too much to get into detail. So applying for grant definitely requires a defined vision, goals, and objectives, and requires a plan. And that's where most people fall down, is they don't have a true business plan, and they need to have a plan for the grant as well. So satisfying the terms of the grant often involves being organized and reporting back to the awarding body how the funds were used, and it has to be very specific. And quite often they are occasionally subject to an audit or a review from the awarding body to ensure that the documentation backs up what is being reported. Failure to satisfy the terms of the grant may require repayment of all or part of the amount, or funds not coming after. So we did recently have that situation with a customer where they weren't able to do exactly everything, so they had to repay a very small amount of the grant that they were awarded. It was only about $1,300 on a multiple 5-figure grant, so it wasn't horrible. But again, a better plan, better organization from that side, and they might have been able to keep it all. And I went too far there. So I think I've said plan about 8 times in the last 15 seconds, but that's the number one way to prepare, is have a plan. Every business should have a business plan that's a living document. We update ours every year. We update our processes every year. It is time consuming. It is something that's very hard to find the time for, but I think personally that it's very important to the long-term success of a business. You're going to want to have a plan specifically about what you're trying to achieve with the grant money and how you'll satisfy the terms of the grant. So I'm sure that Jordan will get into this a bit more with SR&ED, but there's nothing like somebody showing up and being like, I want to apply for SR&ED, and they have nothing organized whatsoever. So I've had that one happen a lot. And we'll get into more detail about that after. But so these are just a few links. They're designed to really be in here so that if you're trying to help your customers find a grant, you have some places to look. The Canadian government, Canadian Council for the Arts, Grant Watch. These are some good places where you can find different grants for your customers. And of course, follow the news, keep apprised of what's going on. There is, it's not truly a grant, but there's a new $40,000 interest-free loan with a $5,000 forgivable portion related to green renovations. So that's something that you might want to learn about to help some of your customers. Apply for the grant. There are professionals who can help with this. It can be a very time-consuming process and not cheap to apply for grants. But if it's a big dollar amount, if it's really important to your organization or your customer's organization, you may want to consider that. Another good source of help are not-for-profits, especially for niche grants. We had one customer who has had a lot of success working with a Francophone not-for-profit, helping her business apply for grants directly related to Francophone interests. So, of course, the biggest thing we can do is to help our customers get and stay organized. And I think that's, a big part of what we do. So good books and records are really a must, in my opinion. Grants or not, I think that's a must. Having good systems in place. So you can use things like class tracking or tags within QBO to help you track the spending related to those grants to make your job easier when it comes to reporting. Help the customer plan and apply for the grant. Usually there's a budget required. Always you have to say what you're doing with the money. It's not just free money. You get to go and spend however you want. You have to show how you use that money to further the mandate of that grant. And then, of course, helping the customer report on the grant to the awarding body and satisfy any terms and conditions. Now, one thing I want to be careful here is beware of scope creep. If this is not included in your engagement, you can do things to aid the customer, But if you're doing the work, I definitely think you should be billing for that work. So just a few more sites. I had the first two on here before. NRCan, this is the one about the Greener Homes grant, the one that I was talking about a moment ago. And just some from other not-for-profits. We have, of course, the Canadian Council for the Arts, World Wildlife Fund for environmental causes, and then cancer research. There are definitely some funding opportunities in that area as well. And of course, this is by no imagination exhaustive. There are thousands and thousands of grants out there. So just a little, we're gonna get in a shred. I am really flying through this. Let me just pause for a second, see if there are any questions. So nothing specific about the material. Okay. So the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program uses tax incentives to encourage Canadian businesses to conduct research and development in Canada. Now, the vast majority of people who've come to us and been like, I want to apply for SR&ED, have spent most of their money overseas. And all that spending is, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, not qualified for SR&ED. So the incentives come in the forms of income tax reductions or deductions, investment tax credits, which can actually result in a refund over and above any income tax owing. So to give you an idea of the scope, there are $3 billion in tax incentives to over 20,000 applicants a year, and it's widely available to a lot of different organizations. So it could be a partnership, could be an individual, could be all kinds of situations. So the purpose is to encourage innovation, technological advancement, pursuit of scientific and technical knowledge, discoveries and ideas, things that lead to Canadian growth and economic competitiveness. Really, I think it's about developing IP for Canadians and Canadian businesses. So a whole lot of text on this slide. It's the systematic keyword investigation or search is carried out in a field of science or technology by means of experiment or analysis. So that means you have to have a plan in place before you start doing it. It's not like, hey, we accidentally discovered this, let's try and throw everything at a SR&ED grant. You need to have some kind of plan in place. Jordan, actually, maybe you could tell me if this still exists, but the last time I was looking at this in great detail, there was a pre-approval program available that you could apply. I think it was up to 5 times in a year, where you could go through your plan and whatnot and kind of get on the right track with SR&ED before you even start your R&D.
Yeah, there is a binding pre-approval process
binding
that
too.
Follow in cooperation with the Canada Revenue Agency, in which the technical scientific reviewer would be assigned to your file, and throughout the year they would have various consultations with you, and they would help you to be able to ascertain whether or not your work is in fact eligible for the program. They'd go through the documentation that you have available, and they would be able to give you that decision pending a number of meetings with them.
That's an excellent program. And I think if any of your customers are going to undertake a big SR&ED application, I think it makes a lot of sense to go through this, especially considering there's no fee for for setting this up, I believe, from the CRA.
Yeah, there's no fee. There's no fee with the process now.
So this kind of methodical analysis can be used for basic research. It can be used for applied research with a specific application in mind, or experimental development. But the key of all this is that the work has to be in Canada. You can't be outsourcing this through Upwork or a Korean engineering firm or some of the different situations that we've encountered where people have run into challenges with SR&ED.
Yeah, just the one exception to that would be if you have Canadian employees, but they're working overseas for a period of time, you can claim for 10% of their, a maximum of 10% of their time.
Oh, interesting. I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, that's
so that would be like,
say
10%
though. 10% of their wages.
Okay. And that would be a very common thing that is claimed: wages, of course, purchasing of materials and equipment. What would be some of the other common things that you would see claimed?
Yeah, besides direct employee wages and materials, then in that case, it would be third-party contractors.
Okay. So if you're to hire, scientists to run some tests, or outsource to a lab to do a bunch of work, those
certainly. Okay. Yeah, it really depends on the industry that you have in question. It could be third-party software developers, perhaps, that are assisting with some of the experimentation when it comes to IT work. It could be, if it's on the engineering side, it could be third-party mechanical engineers, consulting engineers. It just really depends on the industry in question and the type of work that they're assisting with. But the key is that they have to be supporting the experimentation or the work in terms of resolving technological uncertainties. But we can get to that later in the case study.
The case study? Okay, awesome. Just one quick follow-up to that. Those consultants, those consulting engineers and so on, they need to be in Canada?
Yes, they do need to be in Canada.
All right, awesome. That's, I think, is the key takeaway about this.
Yeah.
Have a plan, and that has to happen in Canada. So some things that aren't included it makes a lot of sense when you start looking at this. So, research in the humanities and social sciences, prospecting or exploring for oil, minerals, gas, commercial production of stuff, style changes, market research, those kind of things, those don't qualify for SR&ED. Really, it's about developing something new. So this was taken directly from the Sheldon Group slide and just altered a little bit for this. So these are just some areas where you do see common claims. Manufacturing, software development and AI, engineering, scientific research, pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of different places where these SR&ED claims can apply. Do you have anything that you're seeing as a trend these days?
Yeah, I'd say the trend would be within software development, artificial intelligence.
That's the big one.
Yeah, that would really be the largest area right now.
So like software development is creating something new, not updating software for a change in regulation, for instance.
In most cases.
In most cases, interesting. So there could be a situation like, the rules change something for the banks. The banks could be applying to SR&ED as they update their software to adhere to those rules?
It could be potentially. A really common problem that we see is achieving integration between different platforms. And so some of the challenges that would go along with achieving interoperability between different platforms and ensuring that the information exchange is up to their specifications. I'd say that's a very common problem that does involve existing systems.
But is SR&ED eligible?
Yes. It can be. It isn't in every circumstance.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, the key is the eligibility criteria.
Okay.
We'll get to that next.
All right. So let's talk about eligibility criteria. Jordan, I'm going to hand over to you. Just tell me when you want me to share the next slide.
Sure, certainly. So this one's good for now. So there are 3 different eligibility criteria. The first of which is that the work has to have a technological uncertainty. And so what is a technological uncertainty then? And so it comes in the form of a problem or an obstacle that's preventing you from meeting your objective. And so the key with an uncertainty is that the knowledge as to how to resolve this obstacle is not certain and it's not available to you within your application. And so as opposed to a technological uncertainty, there's a term within CRA's vocabulary anyway, when it comes to SR&ED though, oftentimes labeled work as a technical uncertainty. And so the difference between the two terms is that within a technological uncertainty, the information necessary to solve the problem is not available over the public domain. So it's not available, perhaps if you were to speak to another expert within the field, you were to look through scholarly articles, or perhaps forums within your industry. And so if this information is not available through those sources or within your experience and you're not able to find an answer to that challenge, that's what enables it to be a technological uncertainty.
So just to ask, it is possible that the technology exists, but is a trade secret by a competitor corporation. So
Absolutely.
okay, interesting. So you
So
could
the
still
key is that
develop.
it's not generally accessible. And
Okay.
so it may so the information may exist elsewhere, like you had mentioned, but it's protected by trade secrets. It's not available to the actual professional themselves. So that's what makes a challenge of technological uncertainty. So I think we can move on then to the next criteria. So the next criteria is that the work has to result in a technological advancement. And so the two are inextricably linked. So whenever you attempt to resolve your technological uncertainty and you gain new information, that is in fact a technological advancement. So an advancement is not a material thing. It's not necessarily creating something new. It's not creating a new software program or a new product, but rather it's the underlying knowledge that is gained through your work. And so what enables a technological advancement to be such, as opposed to just learning any piece of information? It's about learning new information that's, again, not available in the public domain. So if you're learning information that's readily accessible within your industry, that wouldn't be a technological advancement. It's more just learning standard knowledge. So it has to be information that's not accessible by you or your competitors. That's what makes a technological advancement. And Jonathan, and so going to the third criteria then, Jonathan mentioned that the work has to be undertaken in a systematic investigation. And so this term also causes a lot of confusion. And more or less, the key is that you have to have a hypothesis that guided your experimentation. So it can't essentially be random experimentation where you're just sort of trying random solutions as to being able to solve your problem. You have to have a reasonable expectation as to the best proposed solution for the problem once you begin. But the hypothesis, what you're seeking to do is to modify or confirm your hypothesis. So the hypothesis doesn't have to be correct. It can be more a first attempt, and from there you're making changes to that hypothesis based on the results of your experiment. But that always has to be the guide. That's the key to a systematic investigation.
Okay. And this is the part where you might actually consult with the CRA about your plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So yeah, just some additional information on SR&ED then. So a lot of people believe that the project has to be successful in order for it to qualify for SR&ED. Certainly doesn't have to be. There are many projects that'll range for multiple years, just in terms of further incremental improvements that are being made to that project. And so each year it's incomplete, but what you're claiming for is the underlying knowledge that's gained through your work during that period. And as I mentioned, one of the most important things is demonstrating that technological advancement or the underlying knowledge that you've gained through your work. And yeah, again, technological advancement is gaining information that's not available, not generally accessible within the field. And some examples, was it available on the internet? Was it available within a textbook? Or asking another competent colleague in your field? But yeah, we can move on to the next slide. And so, okay, so Northwest Hydraulics. The actual case title was Northwest Hydraulic Consultants versus the Queen. And so this was a landmark case in SR&ED. And so this was within the Tax Court of Canada, where there were hydraulic consultants that were developing various models of dams and dikes, new designs that were to be implemented across Canada and across the United States, different areas of Europe and whatnot. But this case has been cited in every other case in the Tax Court of Canada when it comes to SR&ED. And statutes that were made within this case have been handed down as well to the CRA, and so so the information that was published on this case has made up the eligibility criteria that are used by the CRA. It has also caused them to create various user guidelines on SR&ED, but really this case is what created SR&ED when it comes to its current form in Canada and the way it's adjudicated, at least. And so just going back to it, here are some quotes from the former Chief Justice of the Tax Court of Canada who oversaw this case. And so here was his definition of SR&ED itself. And so he said it was experimental development, well, at least of experimental development itself. And so it's experimental development, namely work undertaken for the purposes of achieving technological advancement, for the purposes of creating new or improving existing materials, devices, products, or processes, including incremental improvements. And so incremental improvements is really the key to this quote. And so it's not only groundbreaking advances when it comes to your technology, but rather making smaller gradual changes throughout the year can also be eligible for the program. So I think in most cases, experimentation within Canada and within other countries, it's done incrementally. It's not done in groundbreaking steps. It's done more just in terms of small changes, small alterations that lead you to be closer to meeting your objective or your new design. And so, yeah, again, it's gradual or indeed infinitesimal progress. So infinitesimal is referring to a very tiny number in mathematics between 0 and 1. And so it doesn't have to be a huge step for mankind in order to be eligible for the program. That's more what it's reinforcing. And again, another quote on SR&ED that he had was that the scientific community is large and publishes in many languages. Technological advance in Canada does not cease to be one merely because there is a theoretical possibility that a researcher in China or another country may have made the same advance. But the key is that the work is not generally known, or it's not available to the taxpayer within Canada. And so that enables it to still be a technological advancement because it's not available to them personally.
So if I can ask, what were the main questions in this case? It seems to me like the knowledge might have been available elsewhere, but not generally known, and that the advancement made by Northwest Hydraulic Consultants was very, very small.
Yeah, well, the key to it was
essentially what happened.
Yeah, so the reason why this claim was denied originally was because dam and dike technologies have existed for thousands of years, and that was being cited by the Xero auditor at the time. So he denied it. He labeled the work as standard practice for routine engineering because these technologies have been used and they're so well known. But within this application, there were incremental improvements that he was making to these dam designs in terms of learning new knowledge about turbidity within these systems, within just sort of new small alterations that can be made to these designs just to be able to better improve the performance of these units. Like, for example, they were working with different filter media, with different screens to be able to reduce the amount of debris that would be affecting the systems themselves. And like, there's a lot more information to be shared on it, but the CRA basically looked at it as routine because it wasn't groundbreaking, because it was such a well-known area. So that's why the key in terms of the incremental improvements was mentioned by Donald Bowman, who's presiding over the case, because it doesn't have to be a groundbreaking step in order to qualify for SR&ED. It can be a gradual amount of learning, a gradual learning that's taking place.
So these kind of claims can occur in very traditional industries, even like, fishing or farming, where technology is being pretty consistent for the general underlying technology is being consistent for thousands of years. But if you find a way to make an incremental improvement, there could be a SR&ED claim.
That's exactly right.
Assuming it's done in a systematic manner. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Cool. All right.
And so he further explains the term technological advancement here as well. Yes, did the process result in technological advance? That is to say, an advancement in the general understanding. Because the problem was at this point, the CRA was saying that it was not a technological advance because the technology was already existing. And the former Chief Justice of the Tax Court, he explained it as, rather than a material thing, it's more as it's acquiring new knowledge within the industry. That's what the taxpayers' technological advancement was. Because like the CR auditor said, the technology does exist already. The turbines that they're using within these units does exist, but the methodology of using it was not available to the taxpayer, and that's why it was in fact a technological advancement. in the words of the former Chief Justice. But just going on to the next question, and this one comes up quite often. So, am I disqualified if I solved the problem using known techniques or procedures? And so this one's also been said by the CRA before, where they'd oftentimes ask a taxpayer, did you solve the problem through known techniques? And they may, in that case, decide to deny the claim and label it as routine engineering. But the former Chief Justice, he explains that term further here. He's quoted, he asks, what is routine engineering? It is this question, as well as that relating to the technological advancement, that appears to have divided the experts more than any other. And so he describes it here. He said, briefly, it describes techniques, procedures, and data that are generally accessible to competent professionals in the field. So the terms people look here most often at are the techniques and procedures. And so in this case, the techniques and procedures may have been used already in terms of what sort of components were implemented within the dam and dike systems. And so they may have been the techniques and procedures. But the term that the CRA and others often ignore is the data itself. Was the data generally accessible to a professional in the field when they're working on this project? That's really the question. So if the work did result in new data or new information being gained, then you can't define it as routine engineering. So it has to. So it's not only the technique you're using when you're solving a challenge, but you also have to look at the data that was available to you when you begun, and then the resulting information that you gained through your work. And so if you're learning new information that's not available within the public domain, then the work that you're doing can't possibly be labeled as routine engineering.
So I'm just like, from my own kind of lay person way of thinking of the pharmaceutical industry, I imagine the techniques and procedures for developing new pharmaceuticals is pretty much standardized. It's just about the experimentation and gaining new data and new information about the effectiveness of possible treatments or possible medications and so on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your understanding is spot on. And so
okay.
Within
it's
SR&ED,
good to know.
it's really always the same techniques that are being used. In machining, for example, it's the same equipment. It's the same sort of programs that are being used in order to solve challenges. But whenever you're changing parameters slightly pushing the envelope slightly, and you're gaining new knowledge, that results in, like the definition says, you're gaining new data that's not available to professionals. And so by that standpoint, you're performing eligible SR&ED, even though you're using well-known parameters already, using well-known techniques already.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and so when it comes to SR&ED claims, I think there's a lot of room for improvement as the process that companies are following. And so most companies will claim SR&ED on a per project basis or perhaps a per job basis. So they'll look for what projects they undertook during the year, which ones had a high cost and complexity and met the 3 eligibility criteria. But oftentimes they'll omit projects on account of various reasons. So if the project was too short in duration, let's say if the project took 2 weeks to solve, maybe you had too many projects that you're working on. Perhaps it seemed to be simple on its own, or maybe if the project was at a low cost, if the project cost might have been about $5,000, oftentimes it's not worth writing a technical report to be able to claim these projects. But when it comes to SR&ED, oftentimes it can be advantageous to aggregate these smaller projects under a common denominator. And so the accumulation of several small projects can be even larger than the typical SR&ED projects that companies are claiming. And so it's something
So
that
could you expand on that?
has to be considered.
Could you expand on that with the common denominator idea?
I think I have it in the next slide, actually. If you could just
okay.
finish the next slide.
Sure. Oh, no, I guess the next slide was not in there, or was perhaps one of the ones that was hidden.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
So when it comes to a common denominator to being able to combine SR&ED projects, we look for a common objective or a common technological uncertainty that multiple projects may have had. So going back to software development, for example, let's say if resolving issues related to performance was a common problem for a company throughout the year, they may have 20 or 30 occurrences of performance issues. Some of them may have taken a week to solve. Maybe they might have had one project that ranged for 6 months, and they would conventionally write a shred project for that one project, but they would write a shred report for that one project, but they would leave out all of those smaller occurrences because they wouldn't get the return on investment they want if there were one technical report for 20, 30 occurrences. So in our case, we will combine those occurrences together under one technological uncertainty, under one or one objective. But it can really be for any reoccurring objective that a company has throughout the year. So within like food production, it could be shelf life, for example, or achieving a certain viscosity of product. And so the key is that every single time that occurrence takes place, there's a small amount of knowledge that's being gained in each one. And so our process would be to linearize all of those occurrences together into one unified shred project. And so with this process, it really helps taxpayers to be able to claim for all the knowledge that they're gaining throughout the year, and they have a right in law to do so. And so they shouldn't be leaving behind smaller projects just because they may have a lower cost. That's really what the point is. You have to be claiming for all the knowledge that's being gained throughout the year.
Okay.
So long as it's not generally accessible.
I have a couple of questions here from the audience that I'd like to convey and maybe expand on a bit. So we're talking about the smaller cost projects now. There are shred consultants out there. One person would like to know, how do they charge? I imagine that varies a lot, but maybe you could expand on that a bit. And at what point does it make sense to bring one in? And when would it make sense to pursue an application without any consultation? And at what point would it just not make sense to pursue any shred application at all?
So the first question then is how shred consultants typically charge. Some shred consultants will charge on a flat rate basis. I'd say the majority of shred consultants charge on a contingency basis, so upon the success of the claim. And so rates can typically be between 10 to 30%.
So of course that is
of the credit that's being received.
Yeah. So if they fail to achieve the shred credit, they don't get paid.
Yes, that's right. They would not.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority. If they're working on a contingency basis, they would not render an invoice if the claim was unsuccessful.
Okay. And of course, I imagine then there's a question of cost effectiveness for a small business to bring in a shred consultant. What kind of claim dollars would actually make sense to bring in a shred consultant?
Yeah, I'd say for a small corporation, if they may have an eligible expense amount of, let's say $50,000, for example, in terms of either T4 salaries or for contractors and materials, I'd say that would be a good standpoint, because shred consultants can help them to be able to reinforce the documentation that they have available. If the claim is to be reviewed as well, shred consultants offer representation before the CRA, because the CRA, at times they don't always make the right decision, and so shred consultants can help a taxpayer be able to formulate an argument that will improve the chances of their claim being approved as opposed to being reduced or denied. Because oftentimes, if the CRA auditor doesn't understand what you're trying to achieve, or it's presented in the wrong way, then it can oftentimes lead to a denial of the claim. It's very important as to how the work is represented.
Okay. And at what point should the shred consultant be brought in?
They can be brought in as the work
prior
even
to the work being done, or after the fact?
Yeah. Well, I'd say once the work begins. I'd say once the work begins, you begin encountering technological challenges. At that point, I'd say it would be the opportune time to bring a consultant in, as they can help you to be able to frame the work further. They can help you to be able to identify which expenses would be eligible for shred, and then also be able to help you to be able to create documentation to be able to demonstrate that your work was undertaken in a systematic investigation.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen problems with small businesses trying to claim after the fact is there was no systematic investigation underway. So, okay. So a follow-up question from the same individual, I think it's Karen Holgate. What is the average percentage charge on a shred contingency claim? Saying that is a big spread, 10 to 30%.
Maybe 20%. That could be the average.
20%, like down in the middle. So like just to kind of expand on that, if the claim is larger, the contingency fee might be smaller, or if the claim is smaller, the contingency fee might be larger, or is that really irrelevant?
Yes. So, I mean, with larger claims, oftentimes consultants will charge a lower contingency fee if the claim is larger than a certain point. But it really depends on what the consultant has, and every consultant's different in terms of their process and their billing as well.
Okay. So once a shred claim and T2 are filed, there's some questions here from Susan McKay Dunn. Any idea how long it takes to get processed? And do shred consultants have CRA contacts to check on where the claim is and what stage it is in processing?
Yeah, so I mean, in our case, yeah, we do work with contacts of the CRA just to be able to get the updated information as to the progress of our files. And so what was the previous question?
So the first question was, how long does it take essentially?
Oh, how long does it take? Okay. So, I mean, it varies. So I'd really say the average turnaround time for a shred claim could be 6 months. Certain claims, like, I mean, the fastest that it happens could be within a week.
Wow. Okay. Have you noticed a change in those patterns through the pandemic?
Last year there were quite a few delays. So last year, that might have went up to 8 months, perhaps. But this year, I'd say it's coming back to the average. But it really depends on what happens with that claim itself. So let's say that you have a company that's had a strong claim history and they've always had their shred claims approved. That could be very close to that minimum that I had mentioned. So it might happen in a month, it might happen in 2 months. But for claimants that may have had a claim denied in the past, it could be selected for review, and in that case, it may take longer than 6 months. It might be 8 months, for example, because the claimant would have to have a meeting with CRA. There have to be various correspondence between them before they render the decision.
So in that case, I'm assuming that being organized and being able to respond quickly to any inquiries definitely helps speed the process up.
Certainly.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I do have a bunch more questions that I would like to ask, but let's get on to the next poll question and make sure everyone can get their CPD. So, what situation does a shred claim apply? The software developer who uses existing tools to make mobile applications with the development team in Canada, the student who accidentally creates a new technology in class, the planned and organized experiments undertaken by a cannabis company in Grimsby to extract chemicals, the e-commerce company that has a Korean engineering firm develop a new product, or all of the above. And then after, you can tell me if I'm right, Jordan.
Okay, this is going a little slower. People are thinking about this one. So just to confirm, you don't have to be right to get your CPD credits. You just have to answer. So we've got 47% participating so far, 52. And just to confirm, you need to answer both poll credits or questions in order to qualify for your CPD. That is a must. So we've got 64%. We'll start a countdown now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End the poll and share the results.
So, Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious one would be the third one, as that would clearly meet the systematic investigation that the firm had undertaken to be able to extract the chemicals. But obviously, the question there would be whether or not that work had resulted in a technological advance, whether they gained new information about extracting those chemicals or not. They gained new information that wasn't available in the public domain. Because if there was information that would give them the solution to be able to perform the extraction that they did, then it would also not be eligible for SR&ED. The first one that you had in terms of the software developer that creates a mobile app using multiple existing tools, that one could possibly qualify, but I'd say it would be more unlikely. But again, it really depends on what sorts of obstacles they had encountered with integrating those tools together, and then ultimately what new information they gained in that process.
Okay.
Was possible, but I mean, the third one would be the most obvious. And then I think the other question that you had, I think the other scenario was the student who developed an app in class. In that case, that would certainly not qualify, as there wouldn't be any expenses, first of all, and the work wasn't undertaken in a systematic investigation, most likely.
So that's really the key, is the systematic, planned in Canada. Those are some of the keys towards a successful SR&ED claim.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also the advancement of the uncertainty. Those are the keys when it comes to the technical portion of the claim.
These are actually all from real situations, all of them. So just a quick quote to end before we go to Q&A. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I just like that quote. Arthur C. Clarke. And yeah, I know that a lot of what we're doing now as cloud bookkeepers really does seem somewhat magical sometimes to our customers. So, all right. So as always, we're known for collaboration. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, connect with us on social media. Jordan is on LinkedIn. Is there any other good ways you'd want people to connect with you? I think LinkedIn is where you publish your announcements about the educational opportunities.
Yeah, on our educational program, we do publish the activities on LinkedIn in terms of the upcoming schedule of our programs. But maybe if you could circulate just my email address as well to our viewers.
Absolutely. Can we distribute that with the webinar recording, Tanya? Awesome. So there's only one.
I'm actually going to just insert the slide deck. So if there's anything in there, just go ahead and stick that in, do a quick change of the slide deck and then send me the.
You're going to download the Google Slides version, not the PowerPoint version that was sent to CPB?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll add Jordan's email to his slide then.
Perfect. And then just, I don't think you've actually shared the link with me for that, but if you want to share that link, then
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, on the SR&ED side, I mean, I'm always happy to talk to anyone as well that has any questions about future projects or about the current work that they're undertaking right now. And so don't worry about it, whether or not you think at this point, whether or not the work seems to have been innovative or breaking new ground within the industry. It's really just a question is whether or not new knowledge was gained for the work. And I'm always happy to give some feedback on it.
So that lines me up really well to the next set of questions I was going to ask you about. Most of the people who are on this call work with small businesses. Very few of us are working with medium and almost nobody's working with large businesses that I know of. What are some opportunities where smaller businesses might be missing out when it comes to SR&ED? Just kind of some random maybe examples that you've seen where this actually worked out for a company or something like that.
Well, I mean, one example with the machining company. So they might look at some of the most obvious projects. So in this case, they were working on an underwater remote controlled submarine unit, which was quite obvious to be containing the three eligibility criteria. It's quite advanced. But what they were ignoring was some of the welding challenges they were resolving. And so on a surface level, it just seemed like they were just fusing substrates together. And it seemed like to them, it didn't seem like the type of work that SR&ED would qualify for. But in this case, they were learning new information about the interactions between the different substrates that they were fusing. They learned new information about ways to be able to resolve pinholes on the substrates, resolve different cracking issues that may have been encountered. And they were acquiring new technological information just about metallurgy in general.
Wow, and I guess it must have been done in a systematic manner to be able to qualify. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
So
any other? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess this is the takeaway in that instance is that even if the work seems simple, if it did result in any amount of knowledge itself, any knowledge is not available within the established standards, it can certainly qualify.
Okay. Any other examples? Does anybody have any questions about perhaps hypothetical situations, things like that? We'll give that a minute, and let me ask a kind of a follow-up question to that welding example. Something that I think is going to be in the news, it has been in the news, is supplying fresh water to communities. So if there is something undertaken by an organization in that systematic and planned out manner to solve a problem, if that technology was not generally known, that could qualify as well?
It certainly could.
Even though it might be something like
it really depends on what new information they're gaining in the field of water filtration or water purification. But you have to be able to link what the underlying area of science is that they're advancing. That's the key as well.
Okay.
Like whether or not it's about learning new information about the actual toxins or bacteria that would be within the water and the interactions they would have between the treatment process that you're applying to it.
I see.
That's really what the main question would be.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question, see if anybody else adds any more. If you were to provide advice to us as a bookkeeping community about what we should be doing to help our customers prepare and get a successful shred claim, what would be like your top three?
Okay, so I'd say if you can recommend to them to be able to record the hypothesis of their experiments, the results of their experiments, so that you can ensure that they have contemporaneous documentation, that would be probably number one.
What do you mean by contemporaneous documentation?
It's contemporaneous with documentation is work that took place, documentation that took place at the same time as the work.
Oh, okay, understood. Not after the fact.
Yeah, not after the fact. Okay. I would say as well, keep in mind that the work results in terms of the advancement for your clients, it has to be centered around the advancement of knowledge within their industry. It's not generally available. So if they're perhaps writing the report based on creating new technology or creating new products, that would be the wrong way to pursue it.
All right. There was a quick comment there by Susan that I think needs to be shared, and that is that timesheets with detail can be very important to claiming wages. Definitely true.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. It's 100%. There's been a large number of claims that have been denied on account of inadequate documentation. And so that would be including timesheets as well. But I mean, within income tax law itself, it's not something that's necessary for claims to be approved, but it's certainly helpful.
Interesting. So what are some other areas where you see documentation fall down?
Yeah, so I mean, timesheets, recorded hypotheses, improper logging for expenses. Those would be some of the big areas.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you very much. I don't think there's any additional questions. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us. I'll be in touch because I do know that you guys have taught me a lot and really helped me understand, get an inkling of what I don't know and understand where a specialist can really help. So thank you very much for your time. And Tanya, do you have anything to add? Do you have any questions for Jordan?
No, I don't. It was great. And, like you say, Johnny, we don't know what we don't know until we know we don't know it, right? So
yeah.
and there's lots of feedback that this is really good. And I think what Karen said was really relevant is that this is important information now, because we've got a lot of people that are, trying to shift and do different things with COVID. There's, the shift happening with them. And absolutely, if they qualify for some of this, that again, if we've got that knowledge to say, hey, you qualify for some of this, let me reach out. I've got somebody that we can talk to about this, and it's a specialist, and to pull in, it just makes us more valuable, and we're doing our clients a better service with that. So yeah, so this is a great topic, great timing, and great information knowledge. So thank you.
Sometimes it's really good to say to a customer, I don't know the answer, but I know somebody who does.
Absolutely. We all don't know the answer. And if anybody ever huffed and puffed about me not having an answer immediately, well, guess what? They're not my ideal client. But that's exactly it. It's knowing where to find that answer, having those connections, and knowing where to get the right answer is what's doing right for our clients, for sure.
Jordan, do you have anything you want to say in close?
No, I just wanted to thank both of you and thank our audience for having me today. And so it's a pleasure to be involved with the program today.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much. And so yeah, Jonathan is going to update, any of the contact information, and then just send me the link that anybody can download. I'll just pop that link directly in the email, and hopefully you guys like the new email layout with everything, and that it's easier to get quicker to get your CPD. And that's great. So perfect. Well, thank you very much. Jonathan, thank you very much, Jordan. It's awesome to have you here as our guest, and I hope everybody has an awesome week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.